and the results of those different tests, you can see that we were able to identify some families, and we saw just a slide ago that the Brenes line, which is actually Brenes Lusunaris, and Doña Cuti also is from that same line. It's actually the Lusunaris. So Brenes, if you remember, in this particular case was Doña Caridad's mother's last name. Her two last names were Brenes Lusunaris, but it's actually Lusunaris that is the mom of Doña Caridad's mother, so Doña Caridad's maternal grandmother. With some other families here, you saw and you'll meet them in just a second via slide. We're able to identify a family whose either paternal or maternal line goes back to the Yoruba of Nigeria, which is a dominant ethnic group, and then another family that goes back to the Brahmin of Guinea-Bissau. And then I'll tell you about a family that goes back to the Urhobo of the Delta region of Nigeria. Here we have Doña Salomerio Vasquez, again those two last names. In this case, and you'll see this a lot with this particular generation, like Doña Caridad, the women had their mom's name first, and really just the short of it is patriarchy and all the ugliness of a male-dominated society and how that affects women, women's bodies, women's names, women's lives. So I'll just leave that there. But here we have Salome Villegas Vasquez. Villegas was her mother. Vasquez was her father, from Guayama, which is on the southern coast. Let's go back to Doña Caridad for a second. She's from Humacao, which is southeast Puerto Rico, also on the coast. And as a total side note, there's evidence that the southern part of Puerto Rico had the last contact, the last years of contact as part of the illegal slave trade. And so there are a lot of people who self-identify as having been born in Africa from the southern coast of Puerto Rico in the 1910 census, which was the first U.S. federal census taken in Puerto Rico. You know, Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States. And so in 1898, I just have to say this for video sake and everybody else, U.S. rules of all kinds, including the census and procedures and whatnot, have been in place in Puerto Rico. They were ushered in with colonization in 1898 and have continued. The first federal census that genealogists are able to use, not the 1900, because you know they're every decade, was 1910. So in going back, this is Doña Salome. She was a singer. Let's go back to Doña Caridad for a second. I just want to show you. You see a picture of her dancing, right? And for me, it's so important to say this about Doña Caridad. Doña Caridad is credited with revolutionizing the way women dance. There's another woman who I'll mention in a second, but the vocabulary of dance that is used for women in Bomba can primarily, not exclusively, but primarily be traced to Doña Caridad. So if anybody dances Bomba and engages in big piquetes, you're a dance descendant. That's why I like to always tell people, you're a dance descendant of Doña Caridad. Because Doña Caridad and her husband, Don Rafael, were part of an era when Bomba was taken kind of from the communities of practice to the stage. And so Doña Caridad, they had to make movements bigger so that people in the back could see. Whereas before, women danced in a very tight space with creating beautiful figures, but you can't see these gentle movements. So these movements became very big for the stage. And a lot of those big movements are still used in Bomba. And that's a direct result of Doña Caridad. Doña Salome was a singer, and she is recorded on a video her descendants who recognize her voice. She is the one singing Cachon de Selena in the documentary La Plena. So if you have a chance, you can go to YouTube. It's a documentary called La Plena, black and white. I worked with her descendants to test that maternal line back in 2017 as part of the Bomba Research Conference that I organize every 2 years. Doña Salome Villodas Vasquez was daughter of Nicolasa Villodas, again that maternal name, Anes. Nicolasa was the daughter of Maria Inés Villodas. And here we find a Maria, who I understand to be Doña Salome's grandmother, who in her death registration, they didn't have certificates back then, so they would just go and report a death. So in her death registration, she is identified as having been born in Africa. When we tested that maternal line, it went back to the Brame of Guinea-Bissau. So this is where I'm saying, like, kind of we're starting really on that westernmost coast, then we're gonna start working our way down with all of these different people who participated in Bomba, were practitioners of Bomba. So we have Guinea-Bissau, that's, for this presentation, that's the most northern result we have. And then we move down to Sierra Leone with the Mende and the Brenes family, and we'll keep moving. In this particular case, with all families, I'm not able to find Africa referenced in their records, but with this family, I was able to. And if you see I'm standing in the top picture with Doña Salome's granddaughter to my right, her great-granddaughter to my left, and her great-great-grandson to my right. On the bottom right-hand corner, we have Yvette. Yvette, because of where she is from Doña Salome and therefore from Doña Maria, we have a record that indicates Doña Maria was born in Africa. We can say that Yvette is the 6th generation out of Africa. When they were taken from Africa, did they leave Guinea-Bissau? We don't know. We just know that ancestrally, way back when, this is their oldest DNA aligns with DNA from here. Moving right along the coast to Patillas, which is another town in the south, we have Doña Wilda. Now, Doña Wilda is the granddaughter of the person that I found that's the oldest bombero that I have found a direct connection to, a live person. Doña Wilda, her grandfather, Simon Blau, was a bombero, a bomba practitioner from Patillas. He was born in the 1860s. Most of the other bomberos I've been able to find direct connection with, they're usually born in the 1870s or later. Her grandfather was born in the 1860s. You heard me say grandfather, right? And if we're doing haplogroup testing, we can't test the granddaughter of a man. We have to test the son of a son of a son of a son of a son. So we have to test her brother's son, who you'll see in just a second. His father, her brother, Doña Wilda's brother, their father was Simon Blau's son. Here is the letter they received from African ancestry. It does not identify their haplogroup, but it does say that their paternal line has a strong genetic match to the Yoruba people of Nigeria. So now we've got 3 different ethnic groups so far identified. You can see how we're kind of swinging along the coast. We're kind of like in that corner where the horn kind of ends and we start heading down to central. So Ruben also lives here in Florida. Ruben tested, and because of documents I was able to find for them, not through Simon Blau, but Simon's wife, Flora, we know that Ruben is the 6th generation out of Africa. And their paternal line goes back to the Yoruba of Nigeria. Now we're just gonna stay in Nigeria for a second, because I wanna tell you about my own family. Many of us in the African diaspora who do genealogy dream of finding a connection to a live person who has a common ancestor with us. Somebody like me who does not have a haplogroup that goes back to Africa has kind of an almost non-existent possibility of making that happen, because the haplogroup helps so much. There's just a stronger line of research that can be done. You can identify how much that haplogroup shows up in different parts of the continent. But somebody who's like me has tested through autosomal tests. This is one for my mother. Now, much like Eric's results and many people in the African diaspora, we tend not to just have one ancestor from one, or one group, one country where we have ancestors. We have ancestors from all over the part of the continent that was affected by the slave trade. And through autosomal testing on my mom's side, now my mom and my dad both have lots of different countries, and I didn't include my own results. They both have Nigeria. However, it's my mom's test that tested against somebody he's the first generation born out of Nigeria. He lives in the UK, and his parents are both of the Urhobo people of the Delta region of Nigeria. And 23andMe is trying to give me an idea of how many generations back we have a common ancestor. And so, because the records don't exist, we can find it, but this is like a gold mine. To be able, I hit gold, being able to find a live person from the continent, or pretty recently through his parents, and DNA telling us you are related. So I've been learning so much about the Urhobo people the last couple years that I've had this information. We've connected, we've talked, so I'm still learning. But in my case, this is not haplogroup testing, this is autosomal testing that helped us achieve this result, or understand this. Now, you heard me say my mom and dad have Nigeria. Well, guess what? Both my mom's parents have Nigeria in their results too. So I don't even know if it's on my mom's dad's side or my mom's side. But one of those, I'm guessing because it's just a wild guess that it's my Diaz line. My mother is Diaz Moreno being her mom. This is, wait, where are we going? This is a carving from the Urhobo people, so I just felt like I wanted to insert my people's art, because I love celebrating just the things that I'm learning. But we have some sayings in Puerto Rico that are help us connect to Africa, to help us understand our history. They're clues. One of them is a phrase that's meant to challenge people who deny their Africanness, who deny their blackness, who deny being an Afro-descendant. And one of these phrases is, si no tiene de Congo, tiene de Carabalí. Like, if you're not one type of African, you're another type of African, but you got African in you. And that's a saying that we have in Puerto Rico. We have another one just like it called, that says, si no tiene dinga, tiene mandinga. So again, if you're not one type of African, you're another type of African. But this is gonna help us transition. Carabalí, do you wanna say anything about Carabalí?
No.
This is not my area of research, so I will say that because researchers are quick to kind of nitpick when somebody gets something that's off. But I've heard other people say that Carabalí is a reference to the Kalabari in Nigeria.
Yeah, Calabar region.
As a matter of fact, the Carabalí in Cuba are what is called ñañigo, and they have this practice, which is it's called abacua. And the abacua in Cuba or Carabalí, actually there are videos where they actually get reunited with people from Calabar, which is actually in the south part of Nigeria, in the coast.
It's right by the Urhobo. Yep.
Yeah.
So good.
The Carabalí, am I right with my understanding that they were considered hard people to tame? Did they have that legacy?
In Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that they made bad slaves because they were very.
I've heard that about the Walla. of
Okay,
Senegal. But again, that's not my area of research, so I'm.
Because the legacy in African American history is that the people from this area, who are generally of the Igbo culture, they have a legacy of making bad slaves because they were resistant. There's a place in South Carolina, I forget what river it is, but it's called Igbo Bend. And legend has it that enslaved Igbos, rather than submitting to being slaves, they would drown themselves in the river at Igbo Bend. Ironically, there's a former football player, a champion football player named Jim Brown, who was known as, well, his people come from St. Helena, among the Gullah people, and they identify as Igbo. And Jim Brown says his rambunctiousness, his will to fight, and his will to be resistant to power comes from his Igbo background, because they grow up with that they don't take no mess.
Well, this phrase helps us transition because we just talked about two families that have direct connection to Nigeria. The Blau family, or the Blo family, it's a Corsican, which is an island owned by the French, but largely Italian ethnically. But the last name Plaud in French is pronounced Blo. But in Puerto Rico, where they Hispanicized it, they pronounce it phonetically because Spanish is a phonetic language, so you pronounce every letter. So Plaud. So the Plaud family, the paternal line is Yoruba from Nigeria. My autosomal results somewhere. My mom's ancestors is Urhobo from the Delta region of Nigeria. Karawali, we understand, refers to the Kalabari people. So you hear these references to Congo and Nigeria. Now Congo, we just did a presentation about this that was just released yesterday on the Escuela de Bomba y Plena Tata Cepeda page. So if you wanna learn a little bit more about Congo and Bomba, Congo and Puerto Rico, listen to that presentation. So again, on these kind of similar to this phrase, Dimas, can you play the song for me now?
What?
Can you play the track?
Oh, the song. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a bomba song that was recorded in between 1914 and 1915 by anthropologist John Alden Mason, and okay.
Yes.
And the chorus of the song, it's about a minute and a half, so I'm gonna let the whole thing play. And the chorus says, "Tu madre es conga, tu padre es carabalí." Okay? All right, so let's hear that song. Again, recorded in Loíza by anthropologist John Alden Mason. So this song was recorded over 100 years ago.